Hello and welcome to another edition of Bible Time. We're reading through the book of Judges together here at Believers Fellowship on our daily Bible reading. Today we come to chapters 13 and 14, and we start the account of probably the most well-known judge of them all, and that is this man Samson. And what you're seeing here as we continue on through the book of Judges, we continue to see the downward spiral of Israel as they go after their idols and they neglect God and they pursue their sin. But we also see God being faithful to his covenant. He's made a covenant regarding these people. And so you see, even though they're ignoring him, they're rebelling against him, they're going after other gods, yet God is preserving them. And that's significant to you and me, because this is the nation that through whom the Messiah came into the world. And so we're seeing the story of God's faithfulness despite Israel's unfaithfulness. And you'll notice right there in verse 1 of chapter 13, it says, the people of Israel again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, so the Lord gave them into the hands of the Philistines for 40 years. So they're being oppressed, they're being ruled over by the Philistines for 40 years. That's the longest time of oppression by another people over Israel recorded in the book of Judges. So this was the bad time, worst time in terms of the oppression. And here, we don't even have a record of Israel calling out to God for mercy. In the past, we've seen them cry out to God for mercy, and God has provided a deliverer for them. This time, they're not even crying out. They're so far gone, they don't even cry out to God for mercy. But God hasn't forgotten them, and God provides a man. And this man is the man Samson. And the story of Samson is quite an amazing one from the beginning. I mean, there's a supernatural conception. Verses 2 and 3 talks about how the angel of the Lord came to the wife of a man named Manoah and said, you've been barren. You haven't had any children. You can't have any children, but you're going to have a child. You shall conceive and bear a son. This is a supernatural, miraculous conception of a woman who was barren. And then there's a lifetime consecration, because it says in verses 4 and 5 that he's to be a Nazirite to God from the womb. Well, we learned about a Nazirite vow back in the book of Numbers. It's a time of dedication to the Lord that was marked by certain things. You wouldn't drink or eat anything associated with grapes. You wouldn't cut your hair, things like that. He's going to be a lifetime Nazirite from the womb. So there's a supernatural conception. This barren woman is going to have a child, and it's going to be a lifetime consecration, a lifetime Nazirite committed to God. And then the story of Manoah and his wife is really an encouraging story. Two people who obviously feared the Lord and honored the Lord. And when Mrs. Manoah told Manoah what had happened, what had been told to her, well, in verse 6, we see a great prayer by Manoah. He says, "Oh, Lord, please let the man of God whom you sent come again to us and teach us what we are to do with the child who will be born." Boy, every dad ought to pray that prayer. When he finds out his wife's going to have a child, he should be praying, Lord, show us what we should do, what we need to do with this child. And of course, this angel of the Lord who's appearing to them, and both of them are going to see the angel of the Lord, and they're going to be amazed by the angel of the Lord, so much so that Manoah is afraid they're going to die. The angel of the Lord, as we've talked about before, this is a pre-incarnate appearance of the Lord Jesus Christ. And so these are amazing things that are happening, amazing things that God is doing in bringing this man Samson even into the world. There's a supernatural conception, there's a lifetime consecration, and there's a family dedication. This family is dedicated to the Lord. And then Samson is born, and it says in verse 24 that the woman bore a son and called his name Samson, and the young man grew, and the Lord blessed him. And then verse 25 says, and the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him. And so we're going to see the activity of the Spirit of the Lord in the life of this man Samson. More is going to be said about the Spirit working in his life than any of the other judges. So you got a supernatural conception, you got a lifetime consecration, you got a family dedication, And you got spirit, let's call it agitation, stirring him up, moving within him. Such great, incredible blessings that this man experiences. But what we're going to find out is all these blessings, he's going to wind up wasting them. He's going to wind up wasting them, and it's going to be because of his lack of self-control. That's a real lesson to you and me as Christians, because we're Christians by means of a supernatural conception. I mean, we're born again by the Spirit of God, and we have been given all the spiritual blessings in the heavenly places. But we can waste a lot of what's been given to us, and a lot of it is through a lack of self-control. That was the issue with Samson. And it starts in chapter 14 with this sinful marriage that he enters into with this Philistine woman. His parents try to tell him not to do it, but he's determined to do it. And actually, this marriage kind of ends before it even starts, because he plays this game with his groomsmen, essentially, during the week leading up to the consummation of the marriage. And they talk his wife into telling them what the secret is to his riddle, and that gets him all mad. And it says in verse 19, and here you see it, and the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, and he went down to Ashkelon and struck down 30 men of the town and took their spoil and gave the garments to those who had told the riddle. In hot anger, he went back to his father's house, and Samson's wife was given to his companion who had been his best man. And so this marriage basically ends before it starts, and you see him in hot anger storming off, a lack of his self-control. But see, here's the interesting thing. It says that the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him and led him to go do and kill these Philistines, and so he could pay off the bet that he had made with the groomsmen. But this is all the working of the Lord. This is the faithfulness of the Lord working. Because if you go back to chapter 4, verse 4 of chapter 14, you see that when his parents told him, hey, you're not supposed to be marrying a Philistine woman. It says there, verse 4, his father and his mother did not know that it was from the Lord, for he, the Lord, was seeking an opportunity against the Philistines. And so the Lord is behind all of this, and when Samson has to pay off his debt, he goes and kills 30 Philistines. That's going to start stirring things up between Israel and the Philistines, and that's going to be the means by which God is going to release them from the Philistines' oppression. And so the Lord is working here, and he is accomplishing his will. And even though he's got a man that lacks self-control, the Lord is still at work, and the Lord is still accomplishing his purposes. That's great encouragement to you and me. That's not an excuse for our sin. That's not a means for us to excuse our own sin, saying, well, the Lord can use my sin, just like he did Samson. No, that's not the way to think about it. The way to think about it is God's being faithful to his promises. Nothing's going to stop him. And the way we should be thinking about this is all the great blessings that the Lord has given to us. We don't want to waste them through the lack of self-control like Samson did. You think of the potential of a man like Samson, and you think about how much was wasted. Think about the potential of any Christian. We don't want to be the people who waste the blessings that God gives to us. So we're going to keep learning from Samson. We're going to learn a lot more that's going to help us to think rightly about all the blessings that the Lord has given to us, and to rejoice in his faithfulness to his promises and his purposes. So join us tomorrow for more on Bible Time.